everyone. I'm Dr. Sreekanth Yerramilli, Human Resource Management, Department of Management Studies, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. Today I'm here to discuss about perhaps one of the most interesting and very important topic for the current generation of professional endeavored people getting into the market today. The topic is about emotive learning cognition for personal effectiveness. The key objectives of this topic would broadly want to cover about the concept of personal effectiveness, and then we would also want to appreciatively understand this introductory lecture about the basic level of learning cognition and its positive effects on the personal effectiveness. How the learning effectiveness through this positive cognition help in the personal effectiveness of the professionals and thereby the HR development is what we would try to discern and appreciatively understand in this coming through slides. The research topic of some significant importance as this is today is more situationally correct for the current younger generations getting into the professional arena these days across different areas of professional streams. The list of contents that would unfold to you in the coming slides would follow the same pattern. So first you'll have a brief introduction, and then you'll have a personal effectiveness concept understanding, and then you'll have the learning cognition improvement methods and a brief introduction about it. And then you'll have an understanding of different methods that are research backed in this mode of development in learning cognition. So what are the different methods involved, how they're being scientifically testified, and how they can help in our personal effectiveness is what is going to unfold in the coming slides now with you. Coming to the brief introduction of the current topic that we are discussing about here today. The technology of today's age has got some dynamic changes that have been happening across the world, whereby the current professionals, preferably we can call them as Gen X, or maybe the millennial generation of professionals getting into the market, precisely whoever is in the undergraduate and postgraduate levels looking forward to their career pastures, are facing this challenge of understanding the dynamics, how the technology has been advancing, and how this learning effectiveness and how our individual cognition can be bettered by some scientifically backed studies in order to improve your learning abilities and implement them in your subsequent careers. So, cognitive science and behavioral research over a period of time has really evolved, especially in the last decade, and tried to address these challenges with a very research supportive testifications. It basically tried to understand what are the areas that would help to improve this learning cognition and how they can be useful in bettering our careers. To be more precise, the learning cognition is about the cognitive abilities of an individual at a very personal level, but the challenge is every individual mediates in different domains of their lifestyle. An individual will be a professional in a work environment, will be a friend, will be also a family member, would also be mediating in different other social environmental aspects. In such scenarios, how the learning cognition can be bettered and what exactly will help, what methods can exactly help in improving your personal effectiveness is broadly being researched. Well-renowned scholars like Martin Seligman and few others have studied a lot in this area and brought up few cognitively positive psychological methods to do this in an easier and relatively simpler way. These are broadly self-help practices that can help you better your learning cognition and cognitive abilities for that personal and professional effectiveness is what we are trying to understand here. So, let us first understand what exactly is this concept of personal effectiveness. Personal effectiveness is a pretty broader area of cognitive studies that broadly deals with understanding different subjects like body language, active learning, goal setting, time management, being proactive or situationally correct in the scenarios. That is called the social intelligence and situational intelligence, as we call it, and assertive behavior and relationships, teamwork, and of course, stress management, importantly. All these various aspects form as a compendium of understanding the personal effectiveness of an individual as a subject in the cognitive studies. And in human resource management, what practices can facilitate betterment of this personal effectiveness in the organizational setup could also be benefited through this introductory session. What exactly is learning cognition and what are the methods involved in it? As explained to you in my introductory slide, the learning cognition is basically about an individual's ability to learn things and discern the situational scenarios and behave accurately. The optimal response of a person and the abilities to understand for optimal response and the rationale behind it is what comprise into this learning cognition. Research have advanced significantly, as a matter of fact, in this cognitive science area, which has brought in some scientific methods that are pretty simple to adopt and that can really help in making this learning cognition at any level of our professional life to be bettered, that we are trying to understand here. The scientific studies of renowned researchers like Dr. Martin Seligman, Dr. Albert Ellis, Dr. Peter Drucker, Edward Deming, etc., suggest some practices with some methods involved in it that are simpler and self-help methods to individuals for better performance in the office setups and other scenarios as we have discussed about it. What are those methods and how simple are they that we can really imbibe in our lifestyles and professional environment for better learning cognition is what we are trying to unfold now in the next coming slides. The first practice or the method of betterment in the learning cognition basically would want to deal about the conundrum of analysis. So research says some very interesting topic that when you attempt to give an exam or a performance or to that matter your daily routine of professional lifestyle, we tend to have a pre-existing set of opinion about the foreseeing scenario. In such scenarios, what eventually happens is that you end up getting into a perpetual conundrum of analyzing the negativity more than the antecedents of positivity that is also being there. So this actually gets you captured into a constant conundrum or a loop of analyzing only the negativity, making the thought process drifted towards the negative consequences, resulting in negative performance in the scenarios. Let us suppose you are facing an interview. Instead of trying to get into a hyper analysis of what's going to happen, what are the things that I'm supposed to keep myself ready, and so on, instead of that, if you stop this hyper analysis of it, the performance would be better, is what the research says. In 2017, there is a renowned research by Sian Belloc which tried to capture this hyper-analytic nature of the brain on an ongoing situation or a performance pressure that gets generated because of hyper-analysis, and it was beautifully named as analysis paralysis. That means that you hyperanalyze something and try to get stuck in the situation wherein your actions and motor sensory reflexes or abilities in the situation are being greatly hampered. This possibly has got a key effect on your performance and definitely resulting in malfunctioning of your performance ability in spite of you having greater skills needed for that situation sometimes. So the research says that if you manage to keep basically this hyper analysis of a situation that you are overseeing, there is a relative ability of your brain to soothe itself and then try to come up with positive performance abilities that are being required at the time of the moment that you are performing. The next in line of this better methods to improve your cognition under the performance is learning at similar simulations. Research says that when we are learning a certain aspect at a certain situation, it is a fair possibility that we better remember the same thing and the output would also be the same at the same simulated scenario. One good example for this, let us suppose you're prepared very well for an exam or an interview, and you most know all the interview situations, you most know all the exam questions that you are expected to perform there. But in spite of that, because of the simulation or the situation that is way different from the way and the ambience at which you have studied the information, by virtue of that, you might be missing on performing well. So the research and the researchers in the cognitive science broadly prescribe that when we are preparing for an event or for a major crucial performance, it is better to have the similar simulation area or the near similar simulation perspectives where you might be going to perform there. If you are having the near simulation, the brain has got the ability to perform well. So in cognitive studies, they call this as a state-dependent learning. State-dependent learning helps you perform better if it is having a similar ambience of practice that you have done. Third and the most important practice that can really help improve our performance abilities by learning the cognition process for ourselves is conditioning the belief. Conditioning belief is something to deal with preconditioning your brain that has the ability to perform better. So, as our mental abilities are broadly defined by what we say to ourselves, predominantly talking about what we believe, what our belief set is broadly about, conditioning belief broadly says that no matter whatever the ability that you have, if you have a stronger precognition that you are going to perform better, the belief carries a considerable amount of momentum for you to perform better. This is called as the conditioning belief. In the cognitive research, there is an interesting concept for this that explains the effect of the brain called as the placebo effect. Perhaps an example explains this better. Placebo effect broadly talks about the aspect and the belief on the aspect that we have and the positive effect that it would generate by purely the preconditioning of your belief set. One good example for this is, let us suppose there is an individual has an acute headache and wanted to have a tablet. He goes to a medic and then purchases a tablet, and because of his busy schedule, he forgets to consume the tablet. By the end of the day, when he realizes that his headache has come down, he strongly feels that he has consumed the tablet and that has got a positive effect on it. But factually, what has happened is the positive effect of him purchasing the tablet and his belief in the tablet having an effect on him has created his mild headache to have come down relatively. It is this interesting effect called as the placebo effect. Meaning to say, let us suppose in our interview scenario, if you strongly believe that you have all the abilities and skills to face the interview well, by far most, it is that you are almost reaching to a considerable extent of confidence level that is required to face the interview better. And you are at a competitive edge in facing the interview or an event or a challenge with better confidence. And this preconditioning of brain by conditioning yourself to believe it is called as conditioning belief. Fourth, and a pretty straightforward method or a practice that can really help you learn better cognition for performance and personal effectiveness is self-counseling. It is very often that we hear from many of the behavioral counselors and soft skill experts telling you to counsel yourself before you go for any preparatory operation. Counseling yourself means talking to yourself in a positive way. It is obvious that usual cognition of our thinking broadly embroils different concepts of negativity around by bringing in the consequences that might affect your performance. But what if we have a prep talk that makes us feel positive, bringing up all the positive sides of making that successful instead of talking about what not can be going wrong, what can be going wrong, can really help you perform better. Self-hearing is very effective in these ways is what the behavioral studies talk about. The most interesting part of these methods that we are discussing here is they are practically applicable and they are highly research backed over decades to help performance abilities go better. And only so that many of the organizations, especially in the human resource management arena, have been implementing them consciously as practices in their organizational setups. Though the introductory lecture would not be able to cover the entire compendium of this interesting study of personal effectiveness, and owing to the reason of its enormous amount of factors involved in it, learning better cognition and helping them for personal effectiveness can be done better with these simple practices that we have started. By concentrating on challenging negative thought process and replacing them with positive practices, as we discussed earlier in the slides, majorly improves the quality of performance and overall increases the personal effectiveness of professionals today. The methods mentioned here are scientifically backed and have got very strong positive effects on the individual effectiveness in professional and other environments. So these prescriptions can be taken forward and can be dealt with in further sessions on more interesting aspects related to that. Hope this emotive methods could help you to an extent, if not totally, help in improving your personal effectiveness with a well-informed prowess of learning cognition that could help you develop your career for betterment. All the best. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.